Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Megan Medlin with H.I.R.E. We're the hub for integration, reentry, and employment. And today we're hosting one of our workshop readiness workshops in collaboration with BMO. We're going to be talking about debt management today. This is a part of our series on workforce readiness workshops. So our upcoming workshops that we have for next month, we have Discover the Possibilities with Disney. So they'll be sharing about professional opportunities and how to get employed with Disney. And that is on April 10th at 1 p.m. Our next Workforce Ready workshop is again with BMO, and we'll be talking about buying a car on April 24th at 12 p.m. We also have a volunteer event on, what day is it? April 20th, sorry about that. April 20th, beach cleanup day at 8 a.m. at Huntington Beach, which is open to anybody. And then also our upcoming Reentry Resource Fair, which will be held on May 8th from 11 to 2 p.m. at the Honda Center in Anaheim. And as always, all of our events are located on our website under our upcoming events tab. If you're interested in attending workshops or getting involved with us, let us know. And with that, I will turn it over to our friend Daniel from BMO, who's going to talk to us about debt management.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan, for the introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daniel Rodriguez. I am the regional manager for Southern California for BMO Bank. I'm sure you guys heard of us and seen our commercials everywhere. So we're excited to be in partnership with H.I.R.E. and be able to support through these educational financial literacy workshops. So the goals for today's workshops are all focused on giving you realistic perspective about debt, presenting strategies for managing your own debt, and supporting you as you consider your next steps. By the end of today's workshop, you'll be able to understand why people find themselves in debt and the most common types of debt. 3, use and analyze budgeting and debt management strategies. Compare various debt management solutions and create a personal plan for how to manage your debt. Now, how many of you have felt the effects of debt in your life? Maybe paying off debt has prevented you from saving money and forced you to live paycheck to paycheck. It may also be possible that debt has caused some tension in your home. Debt may impact you in a way that is as simple as not being able to go out to dinner as much as you like, or to accomplish personal goals such as travel. In this workshop, we will learn how to take positive steps to address our debt. So the reality of debt. So over 75% of all American adults are in debt. Did you know that the average American has about $38,000 in personal debt? You can see how this is broken down by age group on the slide here. A growing number of Gen Zers have taken on some type of debt now that they're old enough to get loans and credit cards. The average debt for this group is $22,000, with student loans listed as the highest form. For millennials, credit card bills are the leading source of debt. On average, millennials owe $42,000 in debt. For Gen Xers, home mortgages are the primary source, with Gen Xers also carrying $39,000 of additional debt on average. And finally, baby boomers, age 50 or over, have the second lowest amount of debt, carrying $36,000 on average. Surprisingly, according to a recent study, credit card debt is the primary source of debt for this group. So before we get into a deeper discussion about managing debt, we need to explore what debt is. So as I mentioned, how do you think of having debt negatively affects your life? So choose the best response. First, A, mental health, B, relationships, C, life goals, or D, planning for emergencies. Yes, definitely. All of the above. The truth is that being in debt can affect all of these things. Being in debt causes us stress and can impact our relationships. 21% of people say debt has caused household tension, and 31% say debt has an impact on their health. Plus, 15% of millennials say they have held off on getting married and having children because of debt. When we have high amounts of debt, we have trouble saving for retirement or a down payment on a home, both of which help us plan for the future. This is the case for about 30% of millennials. As you can see, the effects of debt can seep into many different parts of our lives, and it can have serious and lasting impact. The only solution? Debt management, which is why we're here today. Before we get into deeper discussion about managing debt, we need to explore what debt actually is. Okay, so there are many types of debt and many different ways a person can get into debt, which is why we see debt connected to many different sources. The definition of debt is money owed for products or services purchased on credit. Now I'll talk about what interest is. Interest is the cost of borrowing money or the borrower pays a fee to the lender for the loan. Simple interest is interest calculated on the principal amount of the loan. The interest is the amount we're being charged to borrow money. The interest is a percentage of the principal, usually charged annually. The interest percentage can vary depending on the product or service. For instance, in 2022, credit card interest rates were around 16% on average, while car loan interest rates were about 5%. Now, in 2023, due to inflation in 2024, we've seen an uptick on these interest rates. So when researching loans, it's important to consider the interest rates being offered. A lower interest rate means you will pay less in fees to the lender over the life of the loan. On the other hand, if you're investing money in a savings account, you're acting as the lender and therefore want a high interest rate so that you earn more money on your investment. Interest rates can either be fixed, which means they stay the same during the life of the loan, or variable, meaning they change according to the economy or your credit agreement. A fixed interest rate is typically is safer than a variable interest rate because the amount you'll be charged over the life of the loan remains pretty much the same. With a fixed interest rate, there will be no surprises about how much you owe. On the other hand, a variable interest rate is more uncertain because the actual amount you'll be charged can change according to your agreement or economic factors. That said, variable interest rates can be attractive when current standard interest rates are high. For instance, if auto loan interest rates are high when you want to purchase a car, it may be advantageous to get a variable interest rate loan so you may benefit if interest rates go down. Now, these are some very basic definitions of interest rates and are not meant to guide your purchasing decisions on their own. What's most important is understanding that when it comes to debt management, interest rates can make the difference in your ability to manage debt. Now that you know how interest works, let's calculate interest in a real life example. Let me tell you the story of Ralph and the regrettable roof repair. In the middle of a particular wet winter, Ralph's roof started leaking. He called the roofing company, which quoted him $3,000 for the repairs. But Ralph had just purchased a new car and he was paying his son's college tuition. He just didn't have the cash on hand. Unfortunately, he couldn't wait. Rain was in the weekend forecast and his mother-in-law was coming for a visit. So he did what most of us would do. He charged the repair to his credit card. The annual percentage rate, that is the credit interest rate plus fees on Ralph's credit card, was 17%, and Ralph planned on paying $50 a month. Okay, 3,000 doesn't sound too bad, right? Until you factor in the interest payments. So how much did these $3,000 purchase end up costing Ralph? And how long did it take him to pay it off? Let's see if we can figure this out together. So if Ralph makes a monthly payment of $50 per month on his credit card with a 17% interest rate, how long would we estimate it will take him to pay a $3,000 roof repair? So some of our options here is A, 135 months, B, 35 months, C, 11 months, or D, 95 months. No worries at all. Thank you for your response. So in this case, it will take Ralph 135 months to pay off the credit card. That's over 11 years. By that time, Ralph would need a brand new roof. And what's worse is Ralph ended up paying an extra $3,743 in interest for the credit card loan, meaning that when it's all said and done, this roof repair will cost Ralph nearly $7,000. Ralph, it will definitely be in debt. If you'd like to see how much your debt is actually costing you, check to see if your financial institution has a loan repayment calculator online. There are often free calculators available that can help you determine how long it would take to pay off a loan and how much you're paying in interest and fees each year. Ralph's situation is not unusual. In fact, these types of situations contribute to many people's financial issues. Unexpected expenses come up all the time. And without any emergency savings, your options may be severely limited. Now, next, we are going to learn about types of debt. Did you know there are many types of debt and not all are the same? So for another poll question here of the different types of debt, what do you think is the biggest source of debt in America? A, student loans, B, credit cards, C, home mortgages, or D, payday loans? All right, so we have A or B in the chat here. And in fact, mortgage debt and credit card debt are tied for the leading source of debt in America. So we had one right there, so credit cards, but the second one is mortgages. Property is a huge purchase, but credit card debt, where's all that money going? According to a recent survey, it's going toward entertainment. Dining and nightlife account for 15% of all credit card debt, followed by hobbies or passions, personal care, clothing, and travel. Take a look at the chart on the screen to find out what people charge in their daily lives. So if we see people are typically dining 15% for dining and nightlife, 13% again for personal passions and hobbies, 13% for personal care, and again 10% for leisure travel. Even though these different types of debts, not all debt is the same. Some debt is often considered good debt, and the rest is clearly bad debt. What do you think that means? What makes something good debt and what makes something bad debt? And I'll highlight some of these here too as well. So good debt provides you with a financial advantage, and it's sometimes referred to because it provides you financial rewards you receive from the purchase counter the cost. Mortgage debt is often considered good debt because it's tax deductible and property has a tendency to appreciate or increase in value over time, right? To what we refer to as equity in your home. However, if the property does not appreciate in value, or if the mortgage loan carries high interest rates, mortgage debt can become bad debt as well. Similarly, student loans are considered good debt because getting an education may increase your earning potential. However, if you take out a loan and never finish your degree, the debt then becomes bad. The worst type of debt is the costliest debt. This usually comes from using credit cards with high interest rates to pay for things like dining and entertainment, as I mentioned. And it's when you don't have the money to pay it back. So some financial experts consider new cars to be a bad debt because they depreciate in value as soon as you drive them off the lot. Now, even though good debt can help you in the long run, it is still debt and it's still money that needs to be paid back. So to determine the personal financial health, we have to look at all the debt, good and bad. One way lenders and other experts may assess financial health is to look at something called the debt to income ratio or DTI ratio. The DTI ratio just sounds what it is what it sounds like. The ratio of a person's total debt to their income. To calculate the ratio, you add up all of your monthly debt, as we see here in this example, and divide that number by your monthly gross income. Income, which means income before taxes. So let's calculate Adidas DTI. So Adidas has a monthly gross income of $5,000 and a total debt of $2,000. Using the DTI equation gives us 0.4. So Adidas DTI ratio is 40%. Again, here's that calculation. So you divide her expenses by her gross income, and that's how we calculate her debt to income ratio. Now let's calculate one of our own debts and debt to income ratio here. So I'll use myself as an example or someone in my industry. So let's say my monthly debt, rent, expenses, things of that sort is $4,000. And my monthly gross income is, let's say, $8,000. So we divide that monthly debt 4,000 by my monthly gross of 8,000, and that gets me my debt to income ratio of 50%. So let's see how financially healthy I am. So according to financial experts, your DTI ratio should be lower than 40%, and below 37% is even better. If your DTI ratio is higher than you like, there are two main things you can do. Either increase your monthly earnings or reduce your debt. We'd all like to make more money, but even if you find a new job, it may take longer time to change your income, especially if you need more training or need to go back to school. What we do have some control over is how we manage our money. So based on my example, ooh, I'm not doing too well. It sounds like I'm in a unhealthy debt to income ratio. So now we're going to look at ways of how we can improve that debt to income ratio. So the first and most important thing is managing that debt, right? Managing all money really is creating a solid budget. So budgeting creates a cash flow plan that allows us to live within our means so that we don't actually accumulate any additional debt and can work to pay off our existing debt while working toward reaching our financial goals. Many financial experts recommend that people create a budget following the 50-30-20 rule. And I think we covered this on a previous workshop, so I'll kind of be talking about it a little bit at a higher level here. Again, what is the 50-30-20 rule? The rule states that 50% of your income should go to your needs or your necessary expenditures like housing and food. Keep in mind that needs also include bills you need to pay each month, including minimum debt payments on your credit cards, your cell phone bill, water bill, light bill, things of that nature. 30% goes to wants or the fun stuff, right? Like hobbies and dining out. And finally, 20% should go towards savings and or additional debt beyond the minimum payments on your credit cards. Now, remember, this is not a hard or fast rule, but a recommended guideline. There may be instances, for example, where your needs, including your housing, cost more than 50%. Now, being in debt can affect your credit score and have a long-term impact. Do you know what your credit score is? Your credit score is a number applied to your overall credit history. It gives numbers, it gets the number lenders use to determine how risky it is to give you a loan. The best credit score you can get is 850. Anything 700 and above is considered to be a good credit score. If you have a lower credit score than that, it may be hard to get credit cards and loans since lenders may feel they cannot trust you, or this can impact the interest rates as well on those credit cards and those loans. Factors that affect your credit score include your payment history, your available credit, your credit history, your new credit, and types of credit. Now, I have a question for you that I would like you to answer here in the poll. What do you think is the most important factor in determining your credit score? A, your payment history. B, your available credit. C, how long you've had credit. D, new credit. Or E, your mix of different types of credit. So thank you for your responses there. The most important factor is your payment history, actually. So paying your bills on time is the most important in determining that credit score. It makes sense, right? If you haven't paid your bills on time in the past, lenders believe that you'll be likely to miss a payment in the future. So what about the total amount of debt? How much do you think your overall debt factors into your credit score? Having a lot of debt compared to the credit limit on your credit cards and loans sends a red flag to lenders that you may have trouble paying your bills if they give you a new loan. Unfortunately, when you have a low credit score, this affects much more than just your ability to get credit cards. Your credit score is checked when you apply for the following. So for a cell phone, a car loan, a home loan, a rental property, utilities, and government programs. It may even be checked if you apply for a new job in some states and if you apply for home insurance. Some companies may refuse to offer you services if you have a low credit score, while other companies may offer you the services but with a higher interest rates or even putting a down payment. Like for example, if you go to AT&T or Verizon, your credit score is not favorable, they might ask you for a deposit to be able to have cell phone service with them. Now let's take a look at another example so we can kind of put it into practice here. So Min and his friend Javier were planning on buying similar homes for $300,000 with 20% down on a 30-year loan. However, Min's credit score was much lower than Javier's at the time. So his interest rate ended up being 1% higher than that of Javier, who had better credit. Min didn't mind paying 1%, right? It doesn't seem like a big difference to him. So he talked to his friend Javier about his home loan rate. Then Javier did the math for him to show how much more money Min would have to pay. Javier showed Min that he'd be paying over $2,000 a year more in interest payments alone. That's over $60,000 in interest over the life of the loan. So Javier figured this out by multiplying his principal by the interest and the time. So to give you an idea of the calculation that Javier used to figure out how much he'd end up paying is interest equals principal times the interest rate times the time in that loan. After Javier explained to Min how much more he would be paying, Min decided to work on improving his credit score before purchasing his new home. As you can see, both your credit scoring factors, such as market fluctuation, can have a pretty serious effect on the interest rates banks offer you for a loan. In our scenario, Javier was able to put a lot more money towards saving and retirement because of his good credit. On the other hand, Min just seemed to be accruing more debt, trying to pay all his bills, so he decided to wait before purchasing his home. Now, financial experts recommend that extra funds be applied to the following accounts in the following order. Number one, create an emergency fund with 3 to 6 months of living expenses. Number two, maximize your 401k retirement contributions. If you have an employer match, that is, if your employer matches the amount you put into your retirement account, and if they also offer a 401k. 3, pay off interest and high annual percentage rate debt. 4, contribute 15% of your gross income to retirement accounts like your 401k. And finally, pay off lower interest debts with anything more than 20% saved. You can do this by reducing the amount spent on your wants. Now, let's talk about these recommendations because they might not be what we would expect. So for the first one, I said, why do you think an emergency fund is number one on this list? So having an emergency fund enables you to cover the cost of emergency to avoid taking on more debt. If you find it difficult to save 3 to 6 months of living expenses, experts recommend that you aim for at least $500, enough to cover common emergencies. So number two, why is it important to maximize the employee match on a 401k? Answer is, if your employee matches your 401k contributions, it's free money. Not contributing the maximum amount is just throwing away this free money. Plus, the earlier you begin saving for retirement, the greater the potential gains made on your investment. And for 3, makes sense. We want to pay off those high interest debts. But look at number 4 and 5. Why do we think contributing to a retirement fund is more important than paying off low interest rates? So the reason for that is generally the earlier you start saving for retirement, the more money you'll have when you retire. The amount of money you'll save paying off low interest debts is generally assumed to be less than the amount you earn by contributing to your retirement early. As you can see, there's a strategy involved in paying off your debts. Many people focus on only paying off debts without giving any consideration to savings, but this may be a huge mistake. In addition to debt payments, planning for emergencies and retirement are important factors. Neglecting these areas may seem to help you in the short term, freeing up the maximum amount of funds possible to put toward debt, but it's a strategy that may cause you more financial hardship in the future. Now we'll learn more about 2 popular debt repayment strategies. And again, we covered these at our last session, but we go a little bit more into detail here. So the first, financial experts recommend 2 strategies for paying off debt as quickly as possible. These are known as the avalanche method and the snowball method. The avalanche method focuses on paying off the debts that have the highest interest rates first, while paying the minimum payments on the rest of your debts. The theory here is that the high interest rate debt will end up costing you more in the long run, so it's good to pay these debts off quickly. In comparison to the snowball method, it focuses on paying off the debt with the lowest balances first, while paying the minimum amount due to the rest of your debts. The thinking here is that you can pay off lower balances more quickly than higher balances. Paying off these loans will reduce your debt to available credit ratio and give you a sense of accomplishment. Now, let's see these strategies in action here. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions. I'll give you a few seconds to think about it, each question, and then we'll respond in the chat. So Kaylee has the following debt. She has a major credit card with an interest rate of 26% with a balance of $3,000. She has a retail credit card, like my favorite Target, at 22% with a balance of $800. And then finally, she has a personal loan at 15% at $1,800. So using the avalanche method, which debt would Kaylee pay off first? A, Awesome. Thank you. A is the correct answer. That's right. The avalanche method recommends that you pay off debt with the highest interest rate first. In this example, that would be the major credit card. After that has been paid off, you would move on to the store credit card and then down the line because you're paying off the highest interest rate. And then finally, using the snowball method, which should Kaylee pay off first? That's exactly right. B. The snowball method again recommends that you pay off the debt with the lowest balance first. In this example, that would be the store credit card. After that has been paid off, she would move on to pay her personal loan. Awesome job for understanding the differences between both of the methods and applying it to Kaylee's debt. Now let's talk about do's and don'ts related to debt repayment strategies. So talking to creditors is number one on the list of do's. Negotiate with your creditors. Communicating with creditors may be the easiest way to manage your debt. When you don't pay your debts, creditors must spend money to keep contacting you. Therefore, it may be in their best interest to help you stick to a payment plan. Try requesting a lower monthly minimum payment or even a lower interest rate. If you're having trouble paying your bills on time, you may even request a deferment. So for those that don't know what a deferment means, a deferment postpones your debt payment for a limited amount of time, allowing you to get your finances in order. So as an example, during the pandemic, we did see that credit card companies, mortgage companies were actually allowing people who own homes or were just having difficulty because they lost their jobs with a deferment process. The second to do, credit counseling. You may also try credit counseling. Credit counselors are usually nonprofit organizations that assist consumers with budgeting and debt management. They can provide you with educational materials, help you create a budget, and may even negotiate with creditors on your behalf. You can find a list of reputable organizations with the Financial Counseling Association of America or the National Foundation of Credit Counseling. Be wary of credit counselors not endorsed by these organizations. If you're not sure, contact your state's protection agency. And then a final do is consolidate your debts if possible. Debt consolidation may be recommended if you have multiple high interest loans. This could be the case if you carry a balance on multiple credit cards, have more than one student loan, or even have many different kinds of high interest loans, including car loans, credit cards, and personal loans. Debt consolidation involves taking out a new loan with a competitive interest rate. Your smaller loans are then transferred to this new loan, reducing both the amount you have to pay each month and the total number of bills you have to worry about. This option may be helpful in managing monthly payments and paying off debt in a timely manner. Finally, considering hiring a debt settlement attorney. This may make sense for your situation if your debt is overwhelmingly high and your wages are in the process of actually being garnished. Not that this is different from hiring a debt settlement company, which is on our list of don'ts on our next slide. So the first don't to managing debt is don't close your credit cards. The first rule is avoid just closing out all your credit card accounts. While it may seem like a good idea to cancel your credit cards when you're in debt, if you cancel them, you can't use them, right? Canceling your credit cards may actually hurt your credit score. If you don't want to be tempted to use your credit cards, put them in a safe place or someplace inaccessible instead. Another don't borrow from your retirement plan. Avoid borrowing from your retirement plan at all costs. You work hard to build your savings, and if you borrow from your retirement account, you may not be able to get back the earnings you've lost. Plus, if you take money out of your retirement account now, you'll be hit with some extra taxes during tax time. And then finally, what we've been seeing a lot more of is don't hire a debt settlement company. Be careful about hiring a debt settlement company. Debt settlement company is a risky option. There have been many cases of debt settlement companies charging customers without delivering on their promises and providing bad financial advice. Experts warn to never pay upfront fees for debt settlement. Be on the lookout for these red flags if you consider this option, and also consider the organization that I mentioned earlier. Another big don't do is don't hide from your creditors. And avoiding your debt won't solve anything. If you can make your minimum payments, please make your minimum payments. In fact, if your creditors aren't able to reach you, they'll probably send your debt to collections. A consequence we'll talk a little bit later as well. It may be possible to make a deal with your creditors on what you owe. Now let's talk about more about that, not being able to pay your debts. So again, one option is debt consolidation, which we will talk about first. So we just talked about the debt consolidation piece. So let's see how debt consolidation helped Carmen, who was struggling to pay her bills from multiple credit card balances. Since she was having problems paying all her credit card bills, she decided to explore debt consolidation. So let's take a look at all her credit card bills on the screen here. So she has a few different credit cards here with a couple of different interest rates. We see her balances there, and then we see her minimum payment. So if we add all those up, looks like her average interest rate for all three of these is 17%, with a total balance of $19,500. And she's only making her minimum payments of $145 for all three. Now, through her bank, Carmen was able to get a debt consolidation loan that freed her up from the stress of managing multiple monthly payments and reduced her monthly payments overall. Even though her balance is the same, right? So when you consolidate, it's still the same balance, but her interest rate was lower than the interest rates from each individual credit card. So this means that by consolidating her debt, overall, it'll be less expensive for her in regards to her payments. Now, debt consolidation, I will say this is typically available through banks, credit unions, and online lenders. So make sure if you're interested in consolidating some debt, consult with your traditional lenders first, because they will offer you the better interest rates than third-party lenders. Now, okay, the debt management strategies we just covered our recommended steps in getting your finances in order. But what happens if these strategies just aren't enough? What happens if you got yourself into a serious financial situation that can be handled with debt management strategies? Let's talk about ways what happens when you can't pay your debts. So debt can be overwhelming. You may be unable to pay your bills, and collectors might begin calling. It happens. In fact, it happens to a lot of people. About 35% of adults with a credit history have a debt in collections owing an average of $5,178. And in 2019, there were more than 750,000 bankruptcy filings. In this last section, we'll talk about what to do if you have debt in collections or you're considering bankruptcy. So we'll talk about collections here. So when debt payments are past due and you haven't paid your bills for some time, your account is transferred to collections. Debt collectors have a poor reputation because some use scare tactics, threats, and harassment when attempting to collect the debt, even though these tactics are not always legal. For this reason, when your debts go to collection, it can be emotionally draining. It will also have a negative effect on your financial well-being. The debt will remain on your credit report for 7 years, and collectors may sue you, leading to wage garnishment, liens on your property, repossession, or even foreclosure. It's important to know your rights in this situation. The Fair Debt Collection Practice Act protects consumers from harassment from debt collectors. According to the FDCPA, debt collectors cannot call you before 8 a.m. or after 9 p.m. They cannot call you at work unless if you tell them not to. And finally, they cannot talk to anyone else except your spouse about your debts. They cannot harass, abuse, or threaten you. This includes obscene language. They can't misrepresent how much you owe. And finally, they can't use lies or deception to collect on a debt. If you think a debt collector is violating this law, you can file a complaint with the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau or your state attorney's general office. If collectors are calling you and you're not sure what to do, or if you're not sure the debt is really yours, you may want to consult with an attorney to assess your options, especially if the debt may be on the statute of limitations or the legal time in which you can be sued for the debt. A word of advice from me, just try to communicate with collectors through emails or letters sent to certified mail. So if you have a paper trail of your correspondence, should you need legal help in the future. The Consumer Finance Protection Bureau has helpful templates for corresponding with creditors and debt collectors on their website as well. And finally, if you're still having trouble paying your debts, and you can also consider bankruptcy. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in this next slide here. So bankruptcy can help you give you a financial fresh start, but it's a serious step that shouldn't be taken lightly. The two most common types of bankruptcy that individuals can file for debt discharge, which is discharge just means that certain debts are released from the debtor's responsibility, are Chapter 7 and Chapter 13. The type of bankruptcy a person files may depend on how much they have, their assets, and their wages. For a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, you generally have to prove that you don't earn enough income to pay off all your debts. Chapter 7 may be an option for people who do not have a lot of assets or property that could be liquidated to pay off some creditors. Chapter 13 bankruptcy is an option for people who generally earn a reliable source of income and can make a plan to pay off debts within 3 to 5 years. Bankruptcy is serious because it remains on your credit report for up to 10 years. It may also be a time-consuming and stressful process. Furthermore, not all debts are discharged through bankruptcy, so keep that in mind as well if this is an option. For instance, student loan debt likely won't be forgiven with the bankruptcy filing. However, bankruptcy allows a person to freeze the pressure of creditors and seek a fresh start. If you are considering filing for bankruptcy, it may be helpful to talk to a consumer bankruptcy attorney so that you understand all your options, or reaching out to the FDCIC for more information. So this last activity is going to help you assess your own financial health really in relation to that. So on this worksheet, please record your gross monthly income, which is your income before any taxes are taken out, and your debts. Write down the total balance remaining on each of that debt account. For example, mortgage, credit cards, student loans, monthly payments for each, and the APR on each debt. Now, I know it can be hard to remember exact figures, but do the best you can. If your figures aren't exact, that's okay. And also, you'll be able to work on this reference later if you choose. So we don't have to do it today, but just so you can kind of figure out what exactly your debt is in comparison to your income. So once you have filled out this document at your own time, this can be used as a helpful tool to figure out which debt repayment strategy will work best for you. So now in conclusion, you have some critical knowledge and skills that elite group of Americans who can tell themselves, who call themselves financially healthy. With financial health, you'll have far less stress, more confidence, better physical health, and stronger relationships. And finally, you'll also have freedom to do what your debt is preventing you from doing now, right? And that's making your dreams come true. So today we've learned the following items: why people find themselves in debt, and the most common type of debt. 2, how to use and analyze budgeting and debt management strategies. 3, how to compare various debt management solutions. And 4, how to create a personal plan for managing your budget. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Megan.
I can find the unmute button. Thank you so much, Daniel. Truly appreciate your presentation. For those that are interested, I know Daniel had mentioned past workshops we had as well. All those are on our YouTube channel or linked to our website if you guys are interested in checking those out. And again, we look forward to seeing you at our next workshop on April 10th with Disney to learn more about their professional opportunities. So yeah, so thanks again, Daniel.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you, everyone.